me? Well, it is 2 o'clock and I am not one for being late. So, welcome to November's Green Room, generous listening for remarkable service recovery. As we go into the busy holiday season, and we're always looking for how are we going to have a successful season and how are we going to do it differently than we did last year? My advice to you is to keep your ears open and your mouth closed more. Not completely, but perhaps a bit more. And I mention that because, uh, as most of us are, we get inspired sometimes in the weirdest of places. And I wanted to share this story with you. If you didn't see it on LinkedIn, I did post this maybe a few days ago because this happened about a week ago for me, and it put in perspective quite a bit for me as it relates to the holiday season, as it also relates to how I take care of my clients, how I take care of all of you, and how you in turn take care of all of your guests, and what truly is so important, and why we are in the hospitality industry and not the technology industry, and why we're not in the property industry, why we're not in the cleaning industry, we're in the hospitality industry. So sometimes we have to listen for two. And no one teaches me this more than the 7-year-old that's in my life, my Brenna. She usually looks very happy and sweet. And the other night, it was sometime last week, she just looked like a little zombie girl, and we were playing a game. It was after school. It was about 7:30 after dinner. She had lost interest about 3 minutes into the game. She started playing with a hair bow that she found and asked for a treat from her Halloween bag, and she was talking with me about her day. And I noticed she had dark circles under her eyes and just didn't seem very engaged, and so I knew that this was ending quickly. So I said to her, I'm feeling a little tired. Would you mind if we finished up the game tomorrow and instead maybe we read a book? And she immediately said, yeah. And she cleaned up the game, began to clean up the game with me. And then we went on to get our pajamas on and read a book and ended the day very well. Unless I was watching her and noticing what she was choosing to do, and I decided to just sort of force, no, we're going to finish this game because we finish what we start, and that's what we do. I think I would have missed this opportunity to really pick up on what was going on. I wouldn't have listened to her body language. I wouldn't have listened to what she was choosing in the right way. So we need to be fully present in order to do that. I'm not very good at that. Most of us are not very good at that. Most of us are not trained to listen. It's a skill that we have to learn every day. We have to practice it every day, and we have to be aware of it every day. So you all know that this is something that whenever I'm training your teams and working with you, this is something we're always practicing, because without it, we know that we get comments, we get guest feedback that says things like the staff was rude and condescending. And you always wonder, is it the staff member? Is it the guest? Or is it the company that they're talking about? The answer is all of the above. The answer is all of the above. And a lot of that, though, can be solved with some generous listening that we bring to the equation. When we're listening for the win in a situation, and we're perhaps maybe setting aside or looking past or working through some of the dumb policies and rules that we put in place, and not asking our staff to enforce dumb policies, or not getting our staff in trouble when they do the above and beyond because that staff member really did listen and there's a payoff associated with that, then we're succeeding. 70% of buying experiences are going to be based on how a customer feels that they are being treated. And that feeling is generally conjured up by that sense of belonging. And a sense of belonging can really only occur if somebody feels heard. So that's why this becomes so important. Ironically, though, like I said, most of us aren't trained on how to listen. And I share with all of you quite often the realities of complaints, and many of these actually do end up sourcing from subpar listening. So when a customer's dissatisfied, they're going to tell a lot of people about that experience. As you know, for every customer complaint, there are 26 customers that remain silent about it. And usually, what ends up happening is that if a customer has a problem, if a guest has a complaint or an issue that they bring to you and they don't feel like you heard their situation, then they will escalate. And usually, escalation these days doesn't go to a general manager or to a director of operations, it goes to TripAdvisor. It goes to a larger forum because that's where they feel that they can make a greater impact because they really don't want something, they want to feel heard. Isn't that interesting? So the more eyeballs on it, then they get what they want, right? Hmm. So what does that tell you? It takes 12 positive service experiences to make up for one negative experience. Of course, we want to try to avoid problems to begin with, but when they do occur, the name of the game is how do we ensure that a guest feels heard? And then when it happens, we want them to feel like we really heard you and it matters to us a lot. And then finally, attracting a new customer is very expensive. And this is why it is so important to us. So, when we're in a service recovery situation, remarkable service recovery can be vacation changing or even life changing. And this is why it matters so much. Here's a great story as to why listening becomes so important. Here's a good scenario, and I'll bet you've encountered this scenario. This is one pretty relevant for those of you in ski resorts. Let's just imagine that there's a guest that's walking up to your building after feeling like they've been misguided to your condominium or to your property. They can't find you. They're furious after walking across icy parking lots, getting poor directions. They got extremely lost. Their cell phone died, so they couldn't get appropriate directions from their GPS. So as they approach you, there are a group of staff members there, your engineers and housekeepers. They're winded and just spitting with anger about the lack of communication. One of the staff members notices the body language, just how angry with the furrowed brow and just right, the kind of the clenched teeth and the shaking fist and the stomping with the ski boot. You can just see it, right? All of it, the flushed face, all of it, the sweat, peeling clothes off, angry, angry. So the housekeeping supervisor approaches, asks to help. The guest says, "It's impossible to help. I want to see your general manager immediately." Well, the general manager's there. So the supervisor says, "She's here today. Let's go inside. Let's get you a glass of water. Let's catch our breath for just a second. It looks like you have had a really rough experience. I'm so sorry. Tell me what happened. And then I'd like you to explain to me what is the problem." So after listening, after connecting with this guest, you figure out that they just got extremely lost. You are able to get them into their room. They were told that they were supposed to be in one place. They ended up in a completely different place. So you're able to finally get them back on track. In the end, they end up being so thrilled and they love your staff so much because your staff just kind of gave them a big kind of arms around them hug and got them where they needed to go and got them set up for skiing so they were still able to ski that day, got them back on track. They ended up buying a condo with you after feeling so connected to your resort, connected to your staff there. So that's how remarkable service recovery can be vacation changing and then become even life changing. So it's just that moment where we notice that furious person instead of walking away from that furious person or being afraid of that furious person. So it's that feeling, right? So 86% of buyers are going to pay more for a better customer experience. Only 1% of customers feel that vendors consistently meet their expectations. And sometimes we get frustrated and we say, well, why don't guests just say what they want? Well, because a lot of guests don't want to express that level of emotion. And you know, these different communication styles, how many of them would actually outwardly express that? Maybe a red communicator would, perhaps a yellow communicator would, but I would venture to guess a blue or a green communicator wouldn't be caught dead having that level of anger. So we end up with this different type of an experience, right? So fundamentally, when a guest's needs are not being met, they're going to automatically resort to not feeling listened to as being the fundamental issue, no matter what it is. Breathing, food, water, etc., security, friendship, family, self esteem. It doesn't matter. On the hierarchy of needs, fundamentally, they will always boil down to I did not feel listened to as being the issue. So if you can address what the real issue is, the physiological issue, the safety issue, the love and belonging issue first, then they will feel listened to as well. Okay, so let's give you some tools and techniques. But first, I want to check in with you. Anybody on the line that wants to share maybe a story, a success story, or a troublesome story where you know listening was the problem? We just, there was a communication breakdown, and if I had listened better, that wouldn't have happened. Or is there anyone that knows that I did such a great job listening and that's why the recovery occurred in this situation? Anybody? I'll let you think about it. So let me come back to this. But for right now, let's define generous listening. It's a type of listening that I focus on with you quite often. And there's a reason for it, because it's a quality of listening. It's not just, hey, we have to listen. Listening is different than hearing. Listening is actually processing the information or processing what is being said and how it is being said and why it is being said. Generous listening is then listening with a deep appreciation to the reality, feeling, and commitment of another, contributing to the other person the experience of being understood. So, if I were to distill that down to what it really means, it's about listen to learn and digest aloud. So, this is where we get to find a win for our guests. If I am listening to learn, what is the problem? What is the dilemma? What is the situation? And then repeat back what I have heard. Paraphrase what I have heard. Summarize what I have heard. All the while separating a couple of things out, then I have an opportunity to make remarkable recovery occur. Okay, let me give you a scenario here. And text chat me. I'm going to ask a question here. So here's the problem. We were here 30 minutes before the scheduled check-in time. We have waited patiently, and it is now 15 minutes past when the condo should be ready for us. And I am so blanked off. How dare you? All right. So there are a couple of different issues going on with this. We have an emotional issue and we have a practical issue. There are always two different root causes. And if you're listening properly, if you're listening generously, you're always listening for both. So let's think about it. If we're listening for the emotional root cause, what is the feeling that this guest has in this moment? This guest is feeling offended, straight up offended, which I can gather from how dare you. And I am so right, sweared. Yes, Cass, misled. This guest is feeling very misled. So This guest was very much under the impression that the condo should have been ready, and by all accounts, yes. I mean, that's a promise that we make when we say check-in time is at 4 o'clock. Check-in time is at 4 o'clock. That's a promise that we make. So if we are truly sticking to that or committing to that, then one of the things that we should be doing is thinking about how can we prevent that problem from occurring. Of course, it cannot always happen. We can do our best though to perhaps make some phone calls in advance and let that guest know, I just wanted to make you aware that our arrival time is currently not not looking like it's going to happen right at 4 o'clock. It appears that we're going to most likely have check-in time at 5 o'clock today. I'm going to be making some monetary adjustments to your account to account for that. I do apologize. And I also want to make sure that we do something else, right? That's beside the point. But the reason why this guest feels misled is because we made a promise to them. So emotionally, I have to solve that issue. And then practically, the practical issue is now they have a time management issue. Okay, so when I'm generously listening, I'm listening to learn and I'm digesting aloud. All right, so I can try to do my little fix that I just shared with you now, but if I try to just do that and fix that for that guest, what's going to happen? Is that guest going to be happy with that? Okay, hi. We're late. We're running late. This is how we're going to solve it for you. Deal with it. No, that's not good enough. So they need remember, we need to go back to listening with a deep appreciation to the reality, feeling, and commitment of another, contributing to the other person the experience of being understood. So we need to back it up a little bit. Hopefully, we don't even get to this, but if we do get to this, we have to think of how we're going to allow them to feel heard. So we engage some listening skills, techniques that we use. So just as a refresher for most of you, we use nonverbal listening, emotion labeling, paraphrasing, mirroring, effective pauses, minimal encouragers, and open-ended and closed-ended questions. Emotion labeling. This is about responding to the emotions that you're hearing, not the content. This is about demonstrating interest and being aware of missing emotions. So, if I'm expecting to be arriving at a property and check-in is at 4 o'clock, I would be frustrated too. I am so sorry that this happened. You should never have had to wait like that. You should never have had to have that expectation. I feel bad. Or I'm sorry that we have not met your expectations. So I should be responding to the emotion, not the content. So that's not about anything other than acknowledging the feeling of being misled. Paraphrasing is checking perceptions. This is creating empathy and rapport. So a summary is trying to summarize what I've heard and agreeing with them perhaps about how they have waited patiently. I couldn't agree with you more. You have been so extremely patient. And I see now that you now have been waiting for 45 minutes. That's way too long. So I want to do everything that I can to try to make sure that we're expediting this. So can you share with me a little bit about what your plans are for the rest of the day? So summarizing what I'm hearing from that person, mirroring, repeating back the last word or phrase, not repeating the swear words, of course, but maybe if they say it's now 15 minutes past when the condo should be ready, I might agree. You're right. It is 15 minutes past. I just noticed that myself. So give feedback and ask for more. How much more time are you able to wait? What's your timeline for the rest of the day? This is giving feedback and asking for more. Effective pauses, 3 seconds or less. So, this is when I'm about to say something important, after I've offered a suggestion, when a guest might be trying to needle me or give me a hard time. So, it's just a frame, it's a way that I might frame what I'm saying. Minimal encouragers, these are sounds, short questions that let people know that I'm listening. Of course, absolutely, I'd be happy to. As I'm looking here, one moment, please. Yes. And then what happened? Tell me more. What else should I consider? Absolutely. So, any of those are great minimal encouragers, ones that I would encourage you to use. And of course, nonverbals whenever we're in a face to face environment. So, these are those physical movements that show others we're listening. What are some good examples? So it could be mirroring the nonverbals of your guest. It could be some head nods, some furrowed eyebrows, the eye flash, the arm folds, kind of the finger on the face usually expresses interest. So these are some good things that you can do. Open and closed-ended questions as well, of course. How may I help you? What additional information can I share with you that might be helpful? I feel like I might be stuck on a thought that you just had. Could you please repeat that for me? Mr. Simmons, may I ask you a question? I think that I jumped to a conclusion when I thought you wanted to pay for housekeeping. So let's revisit that so that you get the type of housekeeping that you want during your experience. Thank you for your patience while I investigated that option we discussed. You have my undivided attention now. I really appreciate that. So there are so many different ways that we can use questions or statements to remain engaged, to show that we're listening, to ask for more information. I promised you also this cushioning technique, and I think it's really important because the cushioning is a way that we can show our guests that we're both on the same side. When you are in, and that's something I guess I sort of did that when I was talking with Brenna, and I didn't even realize I had because I told her that I was tired too. And when I told her that I was tired too, she agreed with me, right? If I would have said to her, "I don't want to play this anymore, Brenna. I'm tired. I'm done." I don't think she would have fought me to keep playing. And she wouldn't have probably quit as readily. I think it was because of the fact that I had asked her and I used more of a kind of we're on the same side. I'm noticing how you're feeling too. And hey, what do you think? Then we're both kind of on the same side. And I got some agreement there. So a cushion, the whole idea of a cushion is that we're both on the same side. I'm agreeing with you. So here's an example up here. Let's say here's a good a room service situation. We have a late room service delivery in a 24-hour room service property, and the guests have an issue with room service coming extremely late. So the order taker says, "I'm so sorry. It's especially terrible that this happened. Oh, excuse me, at 2:30 in the morning. Let me investigate, please." So the cushion is it's especially terrible that this happened at 2:30 in the morning. So the cushion deconstructed is it's terrible feeling word when this happened at 2:30 in the morning. You see that? So that cushion gives the order taker the space to be able to come up with the appropriate solution because now the guest is saying, "Okay, you are on my side. You are going to do what you can do. Even if I can't fix it at all, I at least know you're on my side." So here we go. "Please accept a refund with no excuse, sir. The gentleman who took your order admittedly said that you repeated yourself several times, but he just didn't hear you correctly. The mistake was completely on our end." So mistakes happen, and most guests are okay with that. It's when we don't have a guest, or when we don't have a guest that has the information or feels heard, that we end up with a problem. So the cushion gives you the space to be able to do that. Cushions always have a feeling word in them. It could be a positive feeling word or a negative feeling word, but the key is to use a feeling word somewhere in there. All right, so this just happened to me this weekend in New York City. I was in New York City and the luggage check system was poor at best. At best. So here's Erica riding herd on luggage check and the bellman. I'm sure I was their favorite guest. I can't believe that a hotel like this doesn't have a better system for luggage check. If one person would have used a cushion, I would have been thrilled. Okay, well, help a sister out and give me a cushion. What could it have sounded like, felt like? What would an appropriate cushion have been? So the issue was that their technology had completely shut down, which I don't think necessarily is a reason for luggage check to not function. I also don't think that it's something that impairs any bellman from being able to use their eyeballs and walk over to luggage check and offer some assistance. So the feeling that I, as a guest, was having was ignored, and I was feeling unvalued, and I was feeling probably a bit hectic and rushed because we were trying to get to the Lion King in about 30 minutes. Yes, I understand the difficulty that comes with handling all your baggage for your entire family. Please let me personally assist. Yeah, one person. Do you know the one person that was the most helpful at the entire property was probably the one that did not have access to technology, and that was the bellman. The bellman that I met later on after our room was finally ready because he was unfettered by the computer system. It didn't matter to him. He was just ready and waiting for whoever needed help. So he was just all about being engaged with people, and he was the nicest and kindest, and probably the one that was ready to be the most available. And he was really listening because he was looking, he was aware, very aware. So, yeah, Cass, you're right. Helping someone with their bags changes their whole demeanor of the guest. The light goes on when they're finally on vacation, when they're offered additional assistance. And it's more than just, do you want help? It's please let me help. It's like, this is what we do. This is how we treat our guests. You have arrived. And so, legendary service is about being aware, watching with the nonverbals and the verbals, of course, of being aware of all of those different things. Um, so I give you these kind of last little ponderances to consider because there are these opportunities for legendary service that occur around you every day. And if you look up and you look for them, you'll be pretty amazed at how a shift occurs in your culture, how a shift occurs in your listening, how a shift occurs in how you see people, and how a shift occurs when you forget too, um, when you choose to listen. So here's a good example. I always like to just remind everybody that people lose stuff. I am a chronic loser of objects in hotel rooms and condos and properties, and it's not intentional, I swear. I'm just really forgetful. So when a guest says, I've looked everywhere and we can't find it, listen to the tone, the words, the body language, if it's available. What's really being said and what is not being said? And what are the practical and emotional aspects of this challenge? I lost my engagement ring in a room once. Where or what is the win here? So you'll be surprised to find out what exactly the win can be sometimes. Making the goal being the win of the situation. This coffee is delicious. Listen to the tone, the words, and the body language if you have it. What's really being said and what's not being said. So when I say this coffee is delicious, what I'm not saying but saying is that I've never had coffee that tasted this good before. I would love to have this coffee again. This is my new favorite coffee, right? So this practical and emotional aspects of this challenge are huge. So I encourage all of you to consider the win in any guest service recovery situation. They're out there and it changes everything when you're open to it. Our last green room of the season of the year will be on December 20th, and it's about giving the gift of feedback. I would love to see each and every single one of you there. Please mark your calendar. It will be our celebration. And we will also be announcing our green rooms of 2020 that day. So be ready. And as usual, please join us on our Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, green rooms, anywhere where you can stay engaged with us. Sorry. We'll have December 20th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Give the gift of feedback. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you there. Have a great day. Bye.